morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be putting on a number of vehicles for you now that some of you, if you've been here before, you may have seen dotted around the site. And we just, it's an area of recovery, it's an area of armoured vehicles that sometimes doesn't get looked at that much. So we thought we'd show them off to you, the ones that we use here on the site. And we're very fortunate because the Army's brought a couple of other vehicles along for us so you can see them. Now, recovery is one of those areas, as I mentioned, not always at the forefront. We tend to look at the big, heavy armoured vehicles first of all, but manoeuvring a dead tank is not an easy thing, but obviously for the military it's quite an important thing. Tanks, it's an obvious thing to say, they are not like your family car, they break down quite often, they are not particularly reliable, and so many things can go wrong on a tank. So it's quite an important issue to be able to actually get it off the battlefield or back into the tank park in peacetime to get it repaired. Now those of you can see a couple of fairly slow vehicles coming on. The first vehicle is something called a Terex. That's the one that doesn't quite look like a JCB. It's a whopping great big, it looks like a bulldozer on steroids. And this one is technically known as a Terex 82. And it's one of those vehicles, very slow, but was being used by the military at places like Marchwood Port to take vehicles off of ferries if their engines weren't working, manoeuvring them around the place. And this particular Terex was actually being used up on the camp by what used to be called the Base Repair Organisation. They're the people, it's now Babcocks who repair the Army's tanks, and they used it to actually manoeuvre vehicles around inside the factory. Once it had come to an end of its working life there, it was handed over to the Tank Museum, and we find it really useful for manoeuvring vehicles into tight spots. So, big, powerful looking thing. The vehicle on the other side of it is just what the Army call a J-cab. It's basically a militarised JCB, and it can manoeuvre pallets, it's four-wheel drive, it can fit it, it's air portable. It's just a very simple, very usable forklift. For the military. Now some of those went out to Afghanistan and Iraq, and when they do go out into combat situations, they quite often have, like so many armoured vehicles nowadays, extra armour plate or some form of protection added onto the vehicle. Now, they were the very slow ones, so we've kept them on the grass in the distance. They'd still be trundling around now if we, because their speeds are pretty slow. But the next vehicle that's coming on is a vehicle called 434. Now, it looks like the 432, the armoured personnel carrier that the British Army has put into service back in the 60s. It's basically the same vehicle, but instead of a troop compartment on the back, they fitted a high-amp crane. And the idea of the crane there is so that REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, could follow around things like Chieftain on the battlefield, and that crane and that space on the rear was big enough so they could put a pack in it and be able to put a new pack in a tank. So it's basically, it's a lightweight version of a recovery and a repair vehicle. So 434, that was called, is part of a family of vehicles that were based on that same chassis. 434 had a crew of 4, and if they were really brave, they even had an amphibious capability. The big truck, the first big truck that came on, that's something called a Foden recovery vehicle. And the Army in the old days had about 300 of these in service. The last of them went out of service in the early 2000s. And this particular Foden recovery vehicle, this used to rescue vehicles from Lulworth, Bovington detachment, and it was also driven by a guy called Pete Galley, who used this vehicle all around Dorset whenever there was an Army parade or something going on the roads. If it was a light enough vehicle, basically they could tow or recover things up to about 30,000 kilos, so not a main battle tank, but something like a Scorpion. This was a vehicle they'd send out. So it's got a great towing capacity, and there's a crane on the rear there that you could lift up about something like, depending on how extended the crane is, up to 12 tonnes, so that's quite a meaty crane on the rear. Foden went out of service with the Army, and it was replaced. It is something called a manned tractor, and that's part of the great big series of manned German vehicles that the British Army is now 8x8 drive, fitted with an Echo train on the rear. So again, part of Royal Engineers, Royal the electrical mechanical engineers and guys who do them. And part of that originally family, the Centurion family, was designed for the British Army way back in 1940. They started late 1950s, they actually re-engineered some of the very own Mark I. So having that capacity to replace a whole what they call an engine pack, sometimes that's the engine and the gearbox, is really important on the battlefield. When you're towing, having that front dozer blade, it acts not only just as a dozer blade if they want to manoeuvre things out of the way, but it acts as an anchor, so they can dig it in the ground, so when they're winching, that vehicle's got a lot of purchase. It's really solid on the ground when they're using that winch. Now the Houston ARV, that was the one in the middle of the three, that's got a hydraulic winch on the front, and that's also got something called an anchor hydraulic crane on the wheel there. And you can see the driver, he's on that front glassing plate with his head out the hand. There's space for a couple of spare crew in there, so if you recover the vehicle, they can fit under the armour as well, and the commanders in the rear on that over they can fit the sheep gun pistol mount there as well. So in other words, you've got some sort of protection on the battlefield. And again, stowage down the side on all these vehicles, those tin boxes carry spare tow panther, which was basically a panther tank without a turret and with a winch on it. That meant they could recover the tank under some form of armour protection. And it meant early in the war a lot of time the tanks were actually lost or destroyed by their own crews because there wasn't a way of... Now the craft as well, you can see, a very good looking vehicle. The whole of the British Army's tank fleet has been downsized, which is why we managed to actually get one of these crafts here down at the tank museum. They're a very sophisticated kit. The important thing as well with armed recovery vehicles, they don't have the same capacity in the way of speed and mobility to keep up with the tanks. There is no point one of those vehicles landing way behind and fast. So what you've got inside that vehicle is collapsed buildings, street furniture, all sorts of things that are going to have to be removed. And Challenger 2 as a main battle tank has got fixings for dozer blades, but something like a craft there, again, armoured engineers really important. You're able to actually manoeuvre a big heavy vehicle and get it through urban areas. Something like that craft really important. Now, as they take those vehicles off, that's a small selection of some of the recovery vehicles that we have in the collection, and the big MAN truck that's down there with the crane on the rear. That's one of the vehicles that the camp uses on a regular